War has long been one of the most destructive forces in human history, but it has also served as a powerful catalyst for artistic and literary expression. Throughout the centuries, the devastation of armed conflict has compelled writers, painters, poets, and musicians to grapple with the emotional, moral, and existential consequences of war. In this video, we will examine how war has shaped art and literature across different historical periods, exploring how artists and authors have responded to violence, loss, heroism, and the deep psychological scars that war leaves behind. Far from simply recording historical events, art and literature have often offered profound critiques of warfare, serving both as acts of resistance and as means of personal and collective healing. The relationship between war and art stretches back to ancient times. In the classical world, poets such as Homer in Greece and Virgil in Rome used epic poetry to immortalize the glory and tragedy of battle. Homer's Iliad, perhaps the earliest sustained literary treatment of war, is not merely a tale of heroism, but also a deeply human reflection on mortality, pride, and the futility of conflict. Similarly, in the Aeneid, Virgil portrays the founding of Rome through the lens of loss and exile, suggesting that even noble causes carry human cost. These early works established war as a central theme in literature, using it as a framework to explore the complexities of human nature. During the Middle Ages and Renaissance, war continued to shape the arts in multifaceted ways. Religious and dynastic conflicts were often commemorated in tapestries, frescoes, and illuminated manuscripts. In literature, the chivalric romances of medieval Europe presented war as a stage for virtue and honor, although these narratives were heavily idealized. It was not until the advent of early modern warfare, marked by technological innovation and political upheaval, that artists began to adopt a more critical tone. Francisco de Goya's haunting series, The Disasters of War, created in response to the Napoleonic invasion of Spain, marked a significant departure from romanticized depictions. Goya's brutally honest etchings revealed the true horrors of war, including executions, rape, and the suffering of civilians. This shift toward realism and moral engagement would become increasingly prominent in the centuries to follow. The First World War was perhaps the most transformative event in modern literary and artistic history. The scale of industrialized slaughter shattered previous notions of honor and glory, replacing them with images of futility, trauma, and despair. In the trenches of the Western Front, a new generation of soldier poets emerged, including Wilfred Owen, Siegfried Sassoon, and Isaac Rosenberg. Their poetry rejected patriotic cliches and instead conveyed the grotesque realities of trench warfare, the psychological breakdown of soldiers, and the disillusionment with nationalistic propaganda. Owen's poem, Dulce et decorum est, famously challenges the idea that dying for one's country is sweet and noble, calling it the old lie. On the visual arts front, painters such as Otto Dix and George Grosz used expressionist techniques to depict the physical and psychological disfigurement of veterans, using distortion and surreal imagery to convey the internal chaos wrought by war. The Second World War expanded the global scope of artistic and literary response. From the Holocaust to the bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, the atrocities of the conflict forced writers and artists to confront the limits of language and representation. How does one depict the unimaginable? Authors like Primo Levi, Elie Wiesel, and Tadeusz Borowski turned to memoir and fiction to bear witness to the genocide, grappling with the ethical weight of survival and remembrance. In occupied Europe, resistance literature flourished as both a political and artistic act. Meanwhile, in the United States, authors like Kurt Vonnegut used satire to process the absurdity of violence. Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse-Five, written after his experience surviving the bombing of Dresden, blends science fiction and trauma narrative in a disjointed timeline, illustrating how war distorts time, memory, and identity. In the post-war era, especially during and after the Vietnam War, the tone of war literature became even more introspective and fragmented. The disillusionment of soldiers, the moral ambiguity of interventionist conflicts, and the alienation of veterans became central themes in American literature and cinema. Novels such as Tim O'Brien's The Things They Carried mixed truth and fiction, memory and imagination, blurring the boundaries between storyteller and soldier. Similarly, films like Apocalypse Now and Full Metal Jacket explore not just the brutality of combat, but the psychological transformation or disintegration of those who participate in it. In these works, war is not merely a backdrop, but a force that reshapes language, narrative structure, and aesthetic form itself. In recent decades, as warfare has become increasingly decentralized and technologically mediated, artists and writers have continued to engage with its evolving nature. The wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria have generated a diverse body of creative work that reflects the fragmentation and moral complexity of modern conflict. Writers such as Phil Clay and Elliot Ackerman, both veterans, have used fiction and essays to explore the emotional dissonance of returning home and the burden of moral injury. Meanwhile, contemporary visual artists like Wafa Bilal and Jenny Holzer have used performance and installation art to critique the political dimensions of war, often engaging with real-time data, surveillance imagery, and interactive media. Their work challenges audiences to confront their own roles as observers or participants in a militarized world. The digital age has also altered how war is documented and interpreted in real time. Social media, live streaming, and citizen journalism have democratized the creation and dissemination of war-related content, allowing artists and writers to respond almost instantly to events. Yet this immediacy can also produce emotional overload, misinformation, and aesthetic fatigue. The challenge for contemporary creators is to find new forms and languages that can cut through this noise and provoke meaningful reflection. Ultimately, the impact of war on art and literature is both deeply personal and profoundly collective. It forces creators to grapple with questions of suffering, morality, identity, and memory. Art offers a space not only to document what has happened, but to imagine alternatives, to resist silence, and to humanize those whose lives have been shattered by violence. War may destroy, but art endures. It bears witness, it mourns, it warns, and sometimes it heals. As we continue to face new conflicts and reckon with old ones, the role of artists and writers remains essential. They remind us that war is not only a matter of strategy and power, but also a matter of humanity. Their work compels us to remember, to question, and, perhaps most importantly, to feel.